Hello, welcome back to TSC Talks, the podcast where we talk about Tuberous Sclerosis Complex and other related issues. My name is Jill Woodworth, and I am your host here in my recording studio closet, getting ready to talk to you about my next guest. She is Lauren Shores Shillinger, and she is a TSC mom. She's here to talk about her experience of a TSC diagnosis and what happened with her daughter. She also is one of the Volunteers of the Year and received an award in DC. So we're here to talk about some of the projects that she's initiated and the accomplishments that she has contributed to and spearheaded, including, she started the TS Alliance of Maryland Community Chapter in the summer of 2017. She helped develop the TSC Clinic Patient Satisfaction Survey. She compiled the TSC resource list for parents, which we do discuss and are always looking to add more information to that. She obtained proclamations from the town of Poolesville, the city of Frederick, and the state of Maryland, planned and implemented the first and second TSC Maryland Day of Advocacy and Awareness. She's chair of the Step Forward to Cure TSC National Walk in DC for 2017, 18, and 19, headed many fundraisers. She also shared her daughter's story through a philanthropic letter that raised over $112,000 for Texas Children's Hospital. There's much more. We don't discuss every single thing that she's done, but we talk about a lot. She's full of enthusiasm and energy, and she keeps a positive attitude despite being very honest about these struggles. Anyways, I enjoyed this discussion thoroughly, and I hope you do as well. I'm going to stop talking. I am going to mention that the podcast TSC Now through the TS Alliance will be starting up May 15th on Global TSC Awareness Day, so stay tuned for that. Anyways, without further ado, there's so many people in the community that are interested in being on this podcast and sharing with me, and I want to talk to all of you. I think it's been helpful for me, for you, and for many other people, so thank you for tuning in and being a part of this, and take it away, Lauren.
Yeah, so tell me a little bit about you. I mean, you've done a lot. I was reading your LinkedIn, and it looks like you had a pretty good job. And
both Sean and I. So here's what's actually funny, and I was going to tell you this when I messaged you after I emailed you some of the background and things with us. So we have a crazy, weird story.
Oh, tell me. I'm so happy to hear someone else's story besides my own.
Okay, cool. And we also always, the funny thing about it is we keep saying that TSC keeps finding us. And I wish the night that we were in DC, like if there was time and I had my head straight, I would love to be able to share my story with everybody at some point, because it's so funny and weird. So Sean and I actually met at one of our first jobs out of college, and I had a communications major and he was business. And we both thought we were going to be in totally different careers. And at the time, it was right when everything was changing with electronic healthcare. And if we would have known in retrospect now with what our lives ended up becoming, we both would have gone to school for something totally different. And he still jokes today that he could go back and be a neurologist or some other major thing, because we both, just like you had just said, we would love to see this. I mean, obviously, if we won the Powerball or we have the ability to just change our careers or do this every single day, all day long, it's literally what we want to do too. We have that much drive and passion and excitement for it. So Sean and I met at a job at an electronic, first at a company that did billing and claims, which we saw crazy stuff doing the billing and claims side of electronic healthcare. But then, so he left to go to a company that was starting electronic prescribing, e-prescribing. And he called me and he said, and we weren't even together. We were just really good friends and really cared a lot for each other. And he said, you've got to come to this company because this thing is starting with e-prescribing, and this is going to be the wave of our future, electronic healthcare. You've got to come over here. And I had always wanted to get into sales and account management and doing demos and doing things in that realm. And so it was such a great fit. And so actually my job when I went there was doing e-prescribing, and there was a grant out of Massachusetts that would give doctors money and incentives to do electronic prescribing. And so literally all day long, all I would do is either travel around to doctors' offices, call them, or do these demos. And as my career progressed over time, and then I got moved into account management and sales demos and like being an expert for electronic healthcare and EMRs, electronic medical records.
That's crazy. That's your background.
Well, but the funny thing is, all day long, every day, I would do these scenarios of diagnosis codes and patient encounters and all these different things. And do you know the one thing that never, ever, ever got brought up was tuberous sclerosis complex. And so when we went to get our I have chills now even recounting the story.
That's because you'd see every random thing, basically.
And obviously people would say to us all the time, you guys have to be doctors. Do you have a scientific background? Are you nurses? Are you doctors?
Well,
and we would just say, this is our career and we're excited
that's funny
about it.
Because
we know everything.
Yeah, I have to say, my college major, people have told me, you should have gone to medical school, this and that, I worked for a pharmaceutical research firm. That's where I ended up getting the vigabatrin miraculously, like all the, So anyways, go on.
Yeah. So like the stars aligned in this very strange, weird way. And I'll never forget when we got our diagnosis, we just stood there and we went, well, what is the diagnosis code? We've never heard of this. Is it tuberculosis? Is it under neurofibromatosis? Is it
your brain was
cancer?
looking?
We just were trying to figure out, what are you even saying? And then when they said, oh, and by the way, just on top of you never hearing of this, there's no cure. And the spectrum is so wide that your daughter could have no quality of life or live mildly and not even really realize she has it. And we were just like, what? What do you mean?
They said that.
Yeah, that was when we got diagnosed. And the only thing they really gave us was a notebook about welcome to the world of epilepsy and watch this video on giving rectal diastat.
Oh, nice.
I mean, it was really, part was,
wow.
But then we have all these other weird things, like Sean has a weird medical record from when he was a kid where they ruled out tuberous sclerosis complex into the state.
Really?
No idea why. And this is back in the late 70s, early 80s.
Uh-huh.
We have, from going to a volunteer event a few years ago with the TS Alliance for one of the soundbite things that they did in DC, we met Sean's second cousins who live in Maryland, and his second cousin has TSC2 and Brynleigh has TSC1. And we're one of the only families in the world that it's like one of, I don't know, maybe 3 to 5 families that they know where there's a line of TSC1 and TSC2, but Sean and I do not have it. I mean, so as far as we know from testing, and nobody else in the family going through the family line with his cousin and with their family. Nobody else.
How curious.
So it's like lightning. Literally, we have a 5-year-old and a 65-year-old in our family umbrella that has TSC1 and TSC2, both living in Maryland, that we didn't meet until we went to a volunteer thing through the TS Alliance that connected us to our actual family. I mean, and I could literally, Jill, I could tell you so many stories like that you'd just be like, what?
Well, everyone I talk to has some part of their story that makes sense, especially in retrospect.
Yeah.
That you're having a light bulb moment,
So for Brynleigh, we had a normal pregnancy, normal labor and delivery, everything that we thought was, knock on wood, normal. And when she was about 9.5 months, I started to notice some strange eye movements with her. Okay. And everybody I showed them to I had just listened to Heather's podcast and recently, oh, you're a first time mom, you're just nervous, she's fine, whatever. It's neurological, this and that and all these things. And I just had that gut mom instinct, which I think we all have to follow and pursue. I mean, that is a major message whenever I talk to anybody. Use your cell phone to record anything you think is strange and follow your mommy gut intuition.
And I love it that's that just because, when my kids were diagnosed, that wasn't an option. And now it's just beautiful. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I don't know where we would be before the technology and having the ability to videotape anything that you see. But I took it to our pediatrician who's very, the top pediatrician in where we live in Frederick, Maryland. And he was wonderful. And he did look at it. And he even said, I don't personally see what you're saying. But again, you are the mom. This is your gut intuition. We need to get this checked out. And he got us right away into Children's National in DC, and they sent us down there. And it was like, oh, this isn't going to be a big deal. I didn't even take Sean with me. I took my parents with me because he said, I really think you're just going down there to be sent home, but we always want to be safe than sorry.
They're on the side of caution.
Exactly. Yeah. So we went down and around the same time I had noticed some arm movement with her as well. And I had noticed them happening more frequently. So, and then I had this one weekend where I got online, and I don't know why I thought I could be a Google and use my own medical background to try to Google all of these things that I had found.
Well, of course.
And interestingly enough, infantile spasms did come up, which Brynleigh did not end up having, but that was one of the things that I saw, and I was terrified, and saw a lot of things about seizures. I did see something come up about TSC amongst many other diagnoses, and I just kept going, click, 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 close, close, close. It can't be any of these awful things. It just can't be these horrific things that I'm seeing. So I tried to hold that down, but I went down there and they did the EEG, and it was a Friday afternoon, the first week of September. So I think everybody was kind of in, Labor Day mode. Yeah. And I remember the girl's face, and I said, you have to tell me. We've driven like almost 2 hours in traffic to get here. This is my first child. I know something's going on. Because they weren't going to give me the results right then and there. This was just an EEG, outpatient EEG. And she said, I'm not supposed to tell you, but it's abnormal. And I knew right away, something's going on. Well, they sent us home. So in the car, I'm frantically calling my husband and saying, why are we being sent home? This isn't right. We don't know the reason as to why this is abnormal and what's happening. So we called the pediatrician. They told us to turn right back around, go pack your bags. You're going to be there for a day or two. But, some kids can grow out of seizures and epilepsy, but there can also be a root cause, and we need to get to the bottom of it. So we packed our bags.
They
went back down. Yes. And I remember that.
How scary for you guys.
Terrifying. Yeah. Absolutely terrifying. And it's hard to relive.
I know. I like am thinking through it, and I always have to go to that little moment. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Because our minds, because of our medical background and our knowledge, my mind is racing. Is this epilepsy? Is this cancer? Is this some rare thing? Is my child dying? What is happening?
It's a panic. Yep.
Yeah, totally panic stricken. And we go back down and they hook us up, and we were by ourselves because our family ended up everybody, when we went back down, everybody was out of town. So we were just the two of us and our little 9.5-month-old baby.
Yep.
And so they hooked us up to an EEG, and I remember them coming in and first saying, well, she has epilepsy. She's diagnosed with epilepsy. She has seizures, and we need to watch her for longer and see what's happening. I remember they kept saying just epilepsy, and I kept thinking, just epilepsy? That seems like extremely dramatic of a diagnosis in itself.
How'd you slip that in there? Yeah.
Yeah, they kept saying just epilepsy. And he goes, but the good news is you're in the best place. We'll run all the tests, and we'll try to see if there's an underlying cause, or if she just had maybe, like a febrile seizure or a random occurrence of epilepsy. And so that kind of made me think, oh, well, maybe it is just epilepsy. Let's see what happens. But I knew something was bad because every day it was, well, today we need to do a brain MRI. Okay, well, now we need to check her eyes, and we need to check her heart, and we need to check. And I kept thinking, my gosh, Sean, this is strange. Like, why are we getting into multi-system, all-organ checking?
Oh,
that's where we really went 0 to 60. And we kept asking them, could you please give us insight as to what you're thinking? And they said, well, it could be a couple different diagnoses. We really don't like to share with you until we have an answer. So a couple days go by, and they finally come in, and a whole group of them, plus it's a teaching hospital. So you got
all the learners. Ones that we've been at our teaching hospitals.
Right. So they all come in, which is a little intimidating, obviously.
You think?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So then they said, we're really sorry. It's this rare genetic disorder. It's tuberous sclerosis complex. And again, like I had mentioned, they said there is no cure. There's just such a range of how the outcome could be, from very mild to extremely severe. And for your daughter, there's no crystal ball, and just only time will tell. And, the very first thing is getting her, she had complex partial seizures. So I had mentioned earlier, we weren't sure if they were infantile spasms, but they believed that they were just complex partial. And they said, we've got to get her seizures under control. Right now she had several tubers in the brain, and she had several rhabdomyomas on her heart, but they weren't affecting any of the blood flow or function. And of course we looked and saw the white spot, which I had shown one of the white spots a little while previous to that, just one white spot, to her pediatrician, and they can have one. And I'm like, oh, okay. And so then we got that notebook, and I know they mentioned the TS Alliance and a couple other resources, but the biggest thing that really was their focus was this epilepsy binder, and talking about the emergency diastat, the rectal diastat, and how to do that. That was kind of a big focus for them. But they said, and I remember that we needed some time, I think, to process what we had been told.
Absolutely.
And I think, we needed time to find a way to share it with our family and our closest friends. And then I think when we finally decided, okay, now we went on the TS Alliance page, and we knew this is something we're going to be a part of, and we want to get with them. And how cool is this that they're in Silver Spring. They're right here in Maryland.
I wondered about that when it
Yeah. So I called, we got that first diagnosis phone call with Dina Hook, who spent, I'm sure, way too long on the phone with us because we had a million questions.
Oh, she's the best. Oh my God.
Yes,
I think
she's such a wonderful resource. And then we were connected with Kari and the rest of the crew, and they were so gracious and wonderful to say, you guys live here in Maryland. And I don't remember if they just offered or we asked, or it was a combination of the two. We went into the office and we met with everybody. And they actually went into the conference room and greeted us with open arms and a little care package gift bag, and wanted to talk with us and embrace us and hear our story and hear what had happened so far. And then we all said we want to be, that took a little while. It wasn't like the next day. It took a little while for that to happen. But once we met them and saw the group and learned about the organization and what they were doing, we just right then and there decided we have two different paths, and anybody can choose these two, and neither one is right or wrong. Some people choose all of this completely, and I respect it, private and to themselves, and that's how they choose they take that path. And for us, we decided, we just felt like a calling to need to take the other path because we had this medical background. We didn't feel like there was enough, obviously, awareness and not a cure. So what was the only thing we could do was to be advocates and volunteers and fundraisers and a voice for Brynleigh until she can have her own. And that's we just never looked back and just went running down that path. That's the way we chose to go when we went to that fork in the road kind of.
That's great. Just the way you laid it out is a really good description of the decision tree that goes into how you get involved.
Absolutely.
And like you said, no one way is right, and there's all kinds of different ways to do it. So that was it. You were off and running. And as far as Brynleigh, tell me a little bit more about, did you get on top of the seizures? Or do you want to spend a few minutes? We don't need to go through every detail, but go for it.
No, because you know how long that journey and the road can be to getting your first couple years, I think, are usually some of the hardest.
Yeah, it's like a lot of people I'm talking to, we get through like the first 2 years and we're jumping.
Yeah.
So
it really is. I think looking back now, I tell parents, that during that time, you might feel lonely. You might feel depths of despair. You might feel moments where you feel totally helpless or hopeless. Like I remember days where Brynleigh just, unfortunately for her, she would try a seizure med and we'd have that honeymoon and then we'd go right back and clustering and worse. And we tried
frustrating.
Yeah, we tried many different seizure medications for her, one of which she had a full body rash reaction to.
That's my daughter she'd be on a med and then she'd get a rash. And then we have to switch it. Until the diet. So
Lamictal was bad for Brynleigh, and she did try many other medications, but we just kept noticing with her that it was short periods of seeing any kind of seizure control, if any, and then just going right back to the clustering and getting worse and longer and stronger. And for Brynleigh, it just seemed when they got really bad, then it was just seizures on and off throughout the day and her being frustrated and then getting tired after them. And it felt like Groundhog Day. It literally, Jill, it felt like being in the movie Groundhog Day, where every day you're waking up and doing the same thing. And meanwhile, you're trying to navigate the calls to the insurance, the calls to set the appointments, the calls to figure out where are we going to go next? What are we going to try next? How are we going to get out of this?
How are we going to make this stop, please, now?
How do we make this stop? So we decided that after, I think, about 5 medications for her, they said she really seems to have intractable epilepsy. These medications don't seem to be working for her, and you may want to start to figure out if she's a surgical candidate. And the interesting thing about that is, years prior, I had SVT, a heart issue that required a laser ablation surgery.
Really?
And so Sean and I decide again with our medical caps that we shouldn't always wear. We started Googling one night about, because Sean said, if they did this on your heart, why couldn't they do this for the tubers in the brain?
And we knew it's a logical conclusion. Absolutely.
Yeah. And we knew that people were having resection surgeries and that obviously TSC kids were having surgeries, but we were just curious that, do they do this? And that's where we actually found Dr. Curry at Texas Children's Hospital, and that he did have the Visualase laser ablation technology, and he was doing this procedure, and he was having really great outcomes. And so we did try the many different medications, and we went and got a couple different opinions, and then, long story short, it led us to going to Cincinnati Children's, where they agreed Brynleigh really does need to be seen for surgical evaluation, and we did all those pre-surgical tests They found that her worst cluster of tubers that were causing the majority of her issues were in her left temporal lobe.
Okay.
And so in the fall of 2016, we went to Texas Children's Hospital with Dr. Curry, and Dr. Weiner had just joined their team, so we did get to conference with him as well. And the epileptologist is Dr. Korg. I mean, all of them, they are the dream team of TSC surgical intervention, in our opinion. And we've sadly referred a lot of families there. We really have over the years, because I like to help families that are along that path, because that's
I think it's really helpful. I see a lot of posts in the TS mommies for doctor recommendations. I love that.
Yes. Yeah. Well, and just the fear of the unknown. It's a huge thing to go from, I'm going to give my child seizure medications to, we're going to do brain surgery. Yeah. I mean, that's a pretty big shift. But I think you get to a point of desperation where we felt like we were giving her her best chance. And I know that I always cried, even for MRIs and things. I would hand her over and be tearful and worried and anxious. And I do remember that there was such a sense of peace and calm that just came over me. But when we handed her over to the surgeons that day, I remember my mom came with us. My husband and I were there. We were gone from our home for weeks. And I just remember when we handed her over, I'm like, we are giving her her very best chance. And we felt so, I mean, of course we were terrified. Well,
no, but I can relate. Because that's where you were.
We had fought this battle for so long and had this Groundhog Day and all these other things that weren't working, and just feeling like we were trying to find the answer. And we just felt like this was giving her her best chance, and that we had done absolutely everything.
Yes, I remember that.
Everything.
And yes. I hadn't thought of it, but I did hold on to that, when I realized that my oldest was going to need brain surgery, remembering we've tried everything. And we had Dr. Teal, who very similarly is, just great connector and
just amazing.
Yeah, always reassuring, like you said, you hand it over. But that moment where you're letting go of them to go to brain surgery, that's a tough one. So,
And the reason why we were and obviously the team the thing we loved about the approach there, we needed them to look at Brynleigh and figure out, we didn't know, was laser ablation going to be the right choice for her? Was a complete resection surgery? The thing we liked about being with their team there is we wanted them to look at everything, all the tests, all the opinions, every piece of data, and tell us and guide us and help us. Is she a candidate, and which procedure is she a candidate for? Because they're obviously the ones that are the experts and have done this surgery so many times, but we felt like we were in the best hands with whichever option they said was the right one for us. And so she went in on a Tuesday, had the depth electrodes placed. They placed 10. They brought her back into the special ICU recovery area with those depth electrodes in, and she had over 25 seizures in the first 24 hours. And they came in and said, oh yeah, I mean, she's doing a great job. I mean, here you're praying for seizures to happen after you've always prayed for them to stop. Isn't it ironic? Yeah. And they said, well, she's done a really good job, and you're okay, girl. You don't need to do any more. We've gotten all the data we needed. And they came back in and told us that it confirmed that it was that left temporal area. And then they went back in that Friday, and Dr. Curry was able to approach it with the laser ablation technique, where they actually use a Visualaze system, and it's a laser guided MRI plus the laser ablation technique of actually burning. They're burning actually the tubers, and then they actually absorb. They kind of turn to liquid almost and liquefy and absorb back into the body. It's crazy.
I haven't heard an explanation of it till now. So interesting. It's fascinating.
It's an alternative technique to the resection. And every situation, is going to be different. But we thought, they always said, well, hey, if for any reason this doesn't work, we can always go back in and do the resection at another time. So that procedure does have a shorter hospital stay. It's less invasive because there's small, tiny holes being drilled versus completely opening up the skull.
Right.
And it's a much faster recovery too, because it's the small holes versus taking open the brain and the skull. So
I'm glad you pointed that out. I see posts, people asking how long is the recovery. So, it depends on the type of surgery that was done.
Yes. So we had to stay a week, and then we did her post-op check, and they let us come home, and then they still follow our case, and then we still go annually to Cincinnati Children's to be checked and do all her annual testing. Her major seizures, the worst ones that we saw the last of them the day, October 16th.
Oh, awesome.
October 14th was the day that she had that surgery. And that weekend, that was the last we saw of those worst ones. We have seen some breakthroughs and other random things, but the surgery was life-changing for us. It was a miracle in that perspective. And we know nothing's given, the future is unknown. And we know that people even have to go for additional surgeries and other interventions. But even just to get a reprieve from that day in and day out, minute to minute, hour to hour was life-changing. It really was life-changing.
And you acknowledge that and just hold on to that hope. I mean, It's really hard not to. And no matter, two of my kids are actually, they've all had seizures in their older years after long periods of being seizure free. And, that was one of my biggest fears. But when it happened, of course, it's horrible and everything. I don't think back and think, and they're okay. And, we were able to backtrack and figure it out and whatnot. Mm-hmm. So it's like a learning process. And I don't look back and think someone said that it would be clear cut. And, I don't resent the time that I spent thinking that nothing would happen in any way.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. So you just got to live it. Yeah, that's great.
Right.
So that took the seizure problem down quite a few notches.
It did. But I mean, obviously with Brynleigh, she did go on to be diagnosed with autism. They wanted to wait about a year or so after surgery to make that conclusion because we had to deal with the surgery part first in the recovery.
Yeah.
And it did really take a full year for her brain to kind of settle and rewire and renetwork.
Yeah.
So we went through that, and then we did we're in one of the research studies at Cincinnati Children's that is connected with all of that. And we did get an autism diagnosis for her. And she does have some general global delays and has a lot of sensory involvement that we've been working with them on. She is in preschool and she'll go to kindergarten next year, but we're trying to get all of her, she gets PT, OT, music therapy, speech therapy. She loves horseback therapy. That's been a wonderful blessing for her. So we're trying to find out for her what that transition to kindergarten will look like, if she can be in a class with an aide or if she will need to be in a special program. That's where we're sitting right now with that phase of
and that's right where you should be
journey.
Sitting. And, I think now, I don't know where you live, but even back when I was making that transition with the kids, it wasn't bad. It really wasn't. And I think one was in a life skills type program. And I remember not wanting her to be and really advocating strongly for her to be moved out of it. And they did move her out. So, I guess nothing's undoable. It was worth trying. We both thought, okay, well, we'll see how that goes.
Right.
So yeah, you can always change it.
Absolutely. But, so that's where things are with her now. We call it our medical vacation. We have to try to see the positive in that, right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Our medical vacation down to Ohio to go to the TSC clinic with Dr. Kruger. And this last year when we went, in addition to talking about some of the autism things and some of the sensory, she does a lot of stemming and different things that are really taking away from some of her abilities to be able to learn and to focus. So we're trying to figure that out. Mm-hmm. And we did find out that she has some cysts in her kidneys. So that was the last time we went. So we'll reevaluate everything again in August when we go. And we try to always tell her we go for those appointments and we get through all the hard part. And then we always say that we do little rewards, little things. Most kids, you can say, oh, if you do a good job, we'll go to a toy store and buy a toy. Brynleigh's not motivated by toys. A lot of our TSC kids have different motivators.
Oh, let me tell you. Oh my goodness. Yeah, she was just the weirdest things that she was obsessed with. But
like Chick-fil-A is a motivator for Brynleigh. She calls them chuggets, and we go get her chicken nuggets.
Whatever it takes.
Well, her big thing is she loves rides, and so it's an expensive thing to ask for. We try to take her to amusement parks or get her on rides. She just loves.
Oh, that's so funny. Rides. She likes the rides. Sensation and
yes, and she's a daredevil. She'll go on anything in Disney, even the fast coasters.
Wow.
So
how cool.
So we try to do that, but that's where we kind of are with her right now in her journey.
Well, great job, Mom.
Thanks. You too.
Yeah, you're just doing, it's nice to hear the younger moms that have learned from the stuff that has come out since, my kids are older. It's great. It's like everyone around my age or whatever wants to hear.
Yeah, but I think that there's so much, I love having the TSC mom friends that are in all phases of life because I think there's so much for the new moms to learn from the old moms and the old moms from the new moms. Or I don't even like using that old moms because I don't like the age.
Yeah, you can. Believe me, it's fine. Call me old.
Yeah. Yes.
I agree.
And I think that even from our daughter's diagnosis back in 2014 to now, to see these freshly, newly, like just in the last couple months diagnosed families, I can already see, my goodness, what has happened from what has come from the funding and the work of the TS Alliance and the fundraising and the TSCRP to now even see the PREVENT trial. I wish that was available for Brynleigh even in 2014. And I'm so hopeful and excited and happy and emotional that the new families, like, my goodness, it's just so unbelievable to see. Goosebumps again. I just get so overwhelmed to see the work and the things that are changing and evolving and how much closer we are to a cure and new treatments. And that's exciting to see that even in just 5 years, 4.5 years. So it's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. It's good that you lay that out because I feel the same way. Yeah. Like TSC, it just affects so much that, putting our hands up, we're going to be heard. That's kind of how I feel. I feel like.
Absolutely.
So how she handled all this?
She is just a very happy girl and very affectionate and smiles all the time. And I think that's something that pushes us just to keep fighting and keep doing what we can for her because, we just want her to be happy and do the best, like with what we have and what we can do for her. I just love that she's been able to come with us to some of these events for advocacy. She came with us on the first Maryland Day last year, and there are some times, and your kids get sick or they don't feel good, or there's been walks that she's been there, and last year I was the chair of the walk, and it was devastating that I couldn't bring her because she was so sick. But there's just, I think you gotta roll with it. We roll with it, and when she can come and she's doing well, it's great, and when she's not doing well, we have a great support system and a lot of family and friends and TSC families that we just rally around. And
I'm glad to hear.
There are lifeline to navigating this journey, and things have been so much better now that we have that support. Absolutely.
That's great. And I'm glad to hear that you have that network. I'm just like kind of in awe of how it's developed. Just so always encouraging any new parent to just get right in there. And I see you posting that in the moms group. So just jump right on it and get involved, I think. So
if that is what is good for you. And
that's true too.
Process.
Yeah, I forget that too.
Cause for you. Yes.
Yeah. I remember years where I would get the literature and look at what everybody was doing and just really know that I couldn't do anything at that point and kind of wanting to, but also knowing that.
But you have to have those boundaries, and you have to know when there's times when you have to take a step back and your family and your situation might not be at the place where you can, but then when you are available and you can be involved and do more, then you can pay it forward and help others in those times. And I think that's kind of the waves of the journey with TSC.
Yes, it is. Absolutely.
And that's okay. And I think that's the thing that's good about our community is that I think we
everybody
all recognize
picks up it's not a contest.
Because it can be chronic crisis. You can be living the chronic crisis, or you can be in a lull, but you never know when things are going to change.
Gosh, so, I know. So tell me a little bit about your role at the TS Alliance and what you've been doing. And
so we made that choice, as I had prefaced kind of earlier in the discussion, that we wanted to run down the path of being really involved, maybe sometimes too involved, because we want to do a little bit of everything. That's just how my husband and I were a team.
Relate.
Yeah, you know how that goes. Yeah, so we decided to run in that direction of just wanting to do everything and anything. Mm-hmm. And I think we kind of took it at one point, right around the time that we started the TS Alliance in Maryland chapter in 2017. Mm-hmm. And at the time, Maryland, DC, and Virginia. And I just said, hey, I feel like there's enough families in Maryland that we can be our own state. And obviously we have a great connection with Maryland and DC and do a lot of things together because of the DC metro area. But there is traffic and there is distance. And there are families just in Maryland that I think we can have our own chapter. And they agreed. And they were wonderful to be supportive and allow us to break off and start our own chapter in 2017. And one of the first things because we were already immersed in activities and committees and fundraising and doing the walks and all these things, but we wanted to start to focus in Maryland and different ideas came up. And one of the first things that year was that we had never done a proclamation before. So we decided we were already doing this advocacy on the federal level, which is amazing. But we were like, what can we do on a state level and in our local community where we live? So the first thing we did was a proclamation in the city of Frederick and also in the town of Poolesville, where I grew up and my parents still live now. And so we went to go to the little town hall for TSC Global Awareness Day and get this proclamation and share our story. And there was a lot of people at the meeting that night with the town commissioners.
So how did you set it up? So just in case anybody else wants to do this.
Yes, and I'm happy to help anybody that wants to do this. And Jay Isham from the Alliance also we all have a template of a proclamation verbiage of what you can send. It's super, super easy. You can do this with the city you live in, the town you live in, the county you live in, the state you live in, and even go through the governor's office if you really want to go to the highest level. But to start off really in your local community is a great stepping stone. And it literally is just a phone call and an email and just saying, hey, TSC Global Awareness Day is coming up on May 15th. We have a child or a loved one or whoever it is that your connection is with TSC, and we would like to have a proclamation that wherever that place is, for us it was the town of Poolesville and the city of Frederick, that you're going to acknowledge and proclaim that May 15th is that local town, city, state, wherever you are, that they're going to acknowledge and celebrate TSC Global Awareness Day and honor that in the area that you live in. And then typically once they put together that document, they will have a little, either a town hall meeting, or if it's on a grand scale, you might be invited to the governor's office to accept this proclamation. It's super cool. You can invite, it's a neat thing that you can have and frame and put in your house, and it's usually a pretty document. And then also you can get some awareness out of it by inviting other families to come join you to accept this proclamation. And you can also get it out on social media or out to different news avenues, whether it's a newspaper or a TV station. So it spreads more awareness. It's like this trickle down effect that this little proclamation can do all of this. Yeah. It's unbelievable.
Yeah. I started seeing them popping up on Facebook.
Yes. And so the cool thing was we were at the town hall with our family getting this proclamation, and I saw a lot of people there that night, and I didn't really know who they were or why they were there. Well, at the end of the night, they approached us. It happened to be one of our Maryland state senators and one of our Maryland state delegates.
No. How cool.
And very cool. And they came up to us and said, here are our cards. We were so taken with your story. And they met Brynleigh, and they gave us their information, and they said, contact our office. Like, what can we do from a state level to help you? And what can we do to do something for TSC? And, sometimes people give you cards and you kind of think it was just a nice gesture. Right. You call me, maybe we'll connect, maybe we won't. Well, I took them up on it, and I called both offices. I said, hey, remember us, this family with TSC and our daughter Brynleigh. We really do want to talk to you. What can we do on a state level? Let's talk. And someone in the office heard the message and had a family member with TSC. And now granted, is that going to happen on every single proclamation and phone call?
You never know.
No, but you never know. And that is why I really wanted to push for sharing this story with people, because I really feel like there's all these chance encounters and people's paths cross for whatever reason they may be. And you never know what's going to come out of it. You don't know what your network and your connections or how far they're going to span or what it's going to turn into. So this lady calls me from the office, and she happened to be the secretary for the senator. And she said, hey, some other rare diseases organizations have done a day of advocacy and awareness. What do you think about doing this for TSC? And then it's history from there, because the very next Rare Disease Day, February 28th, we did our very first Maryland TSC Day of Advocacy and Awareness. And then subsequently, we did another one this year, the second one. We got families from all over the different areas of Maryland to come, the different counties. And we met with our state senators and delegates to tell them about TSC and to talk about what we could do in the state of Maryland to help our cause and how we could work together. And then they did a resolution in the Senate and the House floor and presented the TS Alliance and our organization with these resolutions that they acknowledged Rare Disease Day as TSC Day for the state of Maryland. And also Governor Hogan, our governor for the state of Maryland, sent a proclamation that the whole state was recognizing the TSC Day of Awareness. It was spectacular. It was awesome. It was a great event for our community, and then turned into an opportunity for a project that we're working on now for some funding through the state for a TSC clinic at the University of Maryland. And we're waiting to kind of get to the next level with that. So it's really a grassroots effort that turned from a little proclamation to an event that we did twice and now being recognized by the governor, and some funding possibly in the works for our University of Maryland TSC clinic. It's awesome. We're very, very excited about it.
Yeah, that's incredible. It's like little things that,
Yes.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying like we don't know. Is that the possibility for every single state and every single proclamation? Who knows? But I think the thing is to get out there, spread awareness. There's these little things that don't take a lot of effort, and they could pay off in a big way. You just never know.
And you don't know who it's going to click with when.
Exactly.
So, yeah, because, certain people might not feel like that they can do that, but other people, it's like they're connected in their town. That's like a done deal. So.
And we even noticed on the second day of advocacy and awareness, one of the other new delegates that we've connected with this year, he walks in the room and one of our TSC parents went to high school with him. So, it's just literally the connections keep weaving and tangling and you just don't know. And I think if everybody looks at their circle of friends and their network and their community, oh, my sister's husband's boyfriend's, whatever, works in this office or knows this person. And that is really, truly how these things happen. And they can really be impactful and powerful if you just meet with the right people at the right time and share with them what you're doing. And then they want to get involved. Especially we've noticed too, if somebody knows somebody that is affected by a rare disease or affected by cancer or affected by a complex medical issue, it really tugs at their heartstrings and they get very excited and want to get involved because they might not know somebody with TSC specifically, but they might know somebody with epilepsy or another rare issue.
Been affected by, there's some connection to something fairly tragic or, seemingly tragic. But it is being comfortable talking about it. And like you said, little steps.
Volunteering or getting involved in our community, right? So the TS Alliance really wants to have this new push for new volunteers and people to get involved. And I think it's sharing your talents and figuring out what excites you and makes you happy and makes you feel fulfilled and like you're paying it forward with what we're all dealing with. Because somebody might be better at fundraising or somebody's better at doing a walk or whatever that may be, or you may have a connection to a company or a celebrity or just something. And it's just trying to really think through your connection and your circle and seeing how you can bring something to the table that we don't have right now or we could expand on.
I think that's excellent. And, just the willingness to collaborate on behalf of the TS Alliance and hear everybody's ideas.
Right. Yeah. Absolutely. And I think too, we had talked about earlier in the discussion, we also didn't know one of the meetings that we went to about talking about volunteering and getting involved for a local event. We met family, and I'm not saying again, everyone's not going to go to a TS Alliance volunteer event with family, but you might connect with somebody you went to high school or college with. You might connect with somebody that is a family member or somebody that has this other connection. And I just think that it's a way to pay it forward and all kind of work together towards a common goal. And some other really good silver lining moments have come out of our journey. That's how I now can look backward and connect the dots. In the beginning, when we were in the trenches with that chronic crisis, it's hard to see through that and to see to the other side. But when I meet these new families of newly diagnosed children or loved ones, I try to say to them, hey, just stick through this, just get to the other side because there will be something good. There will be something good that will come out of this and you're stronger and you're going to get through it, right? You're going to get to the other side. And I think now the cool thing is that I can share with other families, there are these positive things that came out of some of our darkest days as a family.
Yeah, that's so important.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I think talking with you, Jill, one of the other things that we had discussed was in that time of doing all that, when we first got diagnosed, I remember meeting a group of this is before I met my TSC Lifeline, my tribe of moms and you guys. When I first got diagnosed with TSC and epilepsy, we were connected through Infants and Toddlers, which is an early intervention program in Frederick County. They have a way to connect you with some other moms that have children with other rare things, And I happened to, again, crazy connection. The person I was connected with had gone to the same college I had gone to, but before me, never had met this lady. And her son had epilepsy, but a different form of epilepsy with a different reason. So she invites me out. We're all kind of you just all of a sudden meet these people and they say, oh, just come be a part of our group. So I go out with them one night and have dinner and meet with these other moms. And the first thing they said to me was, welcome to the club. And it's really a lot like our TSC community says, oh, you've become part of this family the best family that you wish you never had. And it is really this sisterhood or even just family networking community that you really would never have wished or hoped for or dreamt about when you're younger. But here you are and you're in this. And I remember meeting with these moms and they were all saying, oh my gosh, when you meet another person that goes through this journey, you've got to ask them for what their resources are and find out about this waiver and get this application and here's this grant. And I just remembered sitting there going, oh my gosh, like,
me too.
How am I going to figure, I mean, do you remember this where you feel like you can figure
You're bringing me
out?
back. I was like, I almost like would take a switch in my brain and click it off because it was too much to, like, it didn't sink in. You know,
right?
I'd just be giving them lip service. Yeah. Because it was too much to take in.
Right. And that's on top of, again, your calls to insurance and your child seizing every day and trying to get a handle on the diagnosis and the treatment. And then, oh, hey, by the way, you've got to figure out the school and the IEP and this and that. And then you start to hear all these terms and you just glaze over, right? I mean,
it's too much. It's too much.
There should be a manual with a glossary of terms.
For
that
sure.
They hand you the
For
minute
sure.
you get this diagnosis. So I do remember one of the things I've been working on recently that I shared with you is trying to get a common list of resources, because through the TS Alliance, obviously we have fantastic resources about where to go for a TSC clinic, where to go for surgery, you know, what to do for treatments, what to do for the prevent trial, and you know, all these other things. And then I just kept thinking to myself, why are families spending days, hours, weeks, months, years on this Easter egg hunt of trying to figure out where these grants and resources and therapies and waivers and all this stuff is? And I know some of it is state specific and some of it is nationwide, but I have really been trying to compile a list of resources because I feel like any day that a newly diagnosed family, or just really any family, wherever part of the journey they're at, and they need help, the last thing they have time to do is do all this resource in
you're
hunting.
Exactly right. And I think we haven't accounted for the fact that a portion of our population is going to have a disability. You know, we're so focused on normal, on that very narrow road strip.
Right.
So we haven't written it down, and you're writing it down. Yeah, I totally love it because I've had the same idea in different ways as far as like people that are TSC. Yeah, but I love it that you've started it. So you started a resource list.
Yes, I started a resource list and I thought, you know what? If I send this and it doesn't help you, okay, I tried. But if I send this and one thing helps you off this list or gives you an idea of, oh, I didn't even know that existed. Let me see if it exists where I live. It's going to help you, right? And it's going to help you to start to think outside of the box of, what are the questions to ask? How can you look for these resources? What can you find? Because there's something out there for everyone wherever they live. And if there's not, there are some national resources that are available that can be tapped into. And I remember one time, and I'm not saying I certainly haven't applied for and done every single thing, but I even remember there are some things out there. I remember one time there's a medical travel grant through the Epilepsy Foundation that someone had passed along to me. And I remember thinking, should I put in for this? And, you know, I don't know if I should do this. And I remember when I called the lady to ask some questions, she goes, listen to me. You're rare because a lot of people don't have to travel with their child for help with what they have. So you should go ahead and apply for this. This was created for families like you. And I think that sometimes we kind of think that way.
Yes, we do.
And we do need to tap into these resources. You know, it is something that is available and out there, and it's to help our families and our loved ones that are faced with TSC, epilepsy, autism, whatever it is.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, like I didn't even know about, I mean, I knew what Make-A-Wish was, but I didn't know that I could apply for it for my son. I mean, I had no idea of it that could happen. And it was just such a wonderful thing at a perfect time when, you know, I didn't have a lot of resources to go on a vacation.
Right.
And, yeah.
Well, and I think too, a lot of families think for those kind of fun, magical, special moments, I think a lot of families feel it's kind of a tug of emotions, right? You know, should I go for something like that? Should I not? But at the same time, you know, when I look at Brynleigh and I ask her, you know, what she wants to celebrate something, or she literally the only things that bring her true, utter joy, you know, is even like I mentioned, seeing her on those rides and doing different things. I mean, you have to try to stop with whatever it is, whether it's chicken nuggets at Chick-fil-A or ice cream or a toy or whatever it is. I mean, we also do have to take those moments to celebrate the little milestones, the inch stones, whatever you want to call them, or try to have times when you do find joy, because our reality is that this is kind of a long journey.
I think joy is what hitting on that. You've got to try to find it wherever you can.
Yeah. And so these resources that are out there, I mean, the Make-A-Wish and things like that are on there, but also some information about seizure alert devices, seizuretracker.com, the seizure monitoring devices.
It's like a gold mine.
Dogs, and then it goes into all the other things like, travel assistance if you travel, outside of your state for treatment or for different research studies. I mean, and the list goes on and on. There are a lot of things out there, horseback therapy, music therapy, just tons of organizations and things. But I've tried to start compiling those so that I can share that list with other moms and other families so that they can tap into some of those resources nationwide and in their own state.
Now, are you taking resources? If someone wants to send you a resource, are you compiling that?
Yes.
So anybody that's listening that might want to send you. Now, do you have a focus as far as not getting too many resources right now or just whatever, send it to you?
Well, I think the thing is that some people have asked about a lot of state-specific resources, and I think that's where things get tricky because
I wondered about that.
Yeah, I think the goal is we can kind of compile a general list, and some of these things are going to be nationwide. And a few of the organizations that I mentioned, one being Casey Cares that's here in Maryland, but they do also flow over into Ohio and Florida and some other states. It just may be that certain ones maybe for certain states, but I think if you get really granular into the actual waiver programs in your state or an autism program in your state or something that's very state specific based on your state's funding, I'm not sure that we're going to be able to manage that and nobody can be the best person to know everything about that. And it changes, I think, pretty often.
For sure. Yeah, I think that's a good rule as far as keeping it useful and not cumbersome. Forward,
but I think it gives you ideas of what to look for where you live and the questions to ask when you meet other families. Hey, do we have this here? And then somebody in your area, maybe even your local ARC or, early intervention programs, then you can say, hey, another mom in another state told me about music therapy. Do you know that we have this in whatever state? And then you might start on a path of, oh, we do have that, and this is the best place to go, and here's how you get information. And
so they're almost conversation starters.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm so thrilled to hear about these things that just are coming up through the woodwork now, I feel like, with people making connections and ideas, and it's great.
Yeah, because I think that's one way that some people feel like, maybe they can't take on all these big projects and big things.
Right. But feels
these are
good to do something.
Things. Yes. And this is a little way. You might have this tiny little nugget of information of something that you found along your journey that could be life-changing for somebody else. And, even the seizure monitoring device, I've talked to a bunch of families where they just didn't know that it was even out there or that it existed. And that it meant that, their child was sleeping with them in their room or their child wasn't able to even get back in their bed or whatever. And I think that for a family can be life-changing to even have that separation of space. And the parents needed that self-care of being able to have their bed back to themselves. And so they didn't even know that was out there. And there are different organizations that help with seizure monitoring devices. And, maybe they're not FDA approved or they might not be something that your doctor recommends, but I feel like if it gives you a little peace of mind and it's something versus nothing, I think it's worth it to do what makes you feel comfortable to manage this in your own home.
Well, of course.
And make you feel safe.
Yeah, and then your stress level isn't as high and therefore, the ripple effect for sure.
Yes. And also on the list, I do have some resources about respite and caring for the caregiver and some different organizations that, to also not forget the caregivers need to be cared for as well. That's certainly something that we a lot of times forget about.
Yeah. And that's another focus I'm trying to take the podcast that way with certain guests as far as, what would have been useful to you when you were, or what did you need to do to get back on course? Where has this taken you and how did you recover? Because I think that for some of us that are a little farther along, where there was more gap. So it became really more frustrating, more stressful, more anxiety. You know what I mean?
Absolutely.
Yeah. I love it. I'm thrilled that I think of you guys like the next generations coming up with, because you have these other resources that perhaps we didn't have. You're able to take that little piece of energy and put it into paying it forward. How have you managed as far as juggling work, home life, family, your support network? You said you had a really good support network. So
yes, definitely when Brynleigh got diagnosed and things changed with her, we had already made the decision that I was going to stay home with her, at least for the first year, because I wanted to be home with her when she was little. But then, and we knew based on how her seizures were and the journey to surgery and all of that, I mean, there's no way for her at the time. We didn't feel comfortable that daycare would have been. And I know some families, they have to, and they have to do what is best for them. But for us, we were scared because her seizures weren't so apparent, the complex partial seizures that she was having. I mean, I would be at a party with her and I'm looking at her and Brynleigh could even be in another room. I must have some weird sixth sense about seizures. I mean, I would know in another room or just looking at her from behind. I knew she wouldn't even be really maybe moving that much. And I just knew, she's having a seizure. And I'd be holding her even at a party or somewhere. And somebody would say, oh, isn't that cute? Like she's staring at this thing. And I'm thinking, well, actually she's having a seizure right now. We're literally having a seizure. So we just knew for us with the type of seizure she had, we knew at daycare or in other settings, we were not going to feel comfortable. And we made the choice. And it was certainly, I mean, financially and just, it's certainly been a struggle to be at home on one salary. But
if you can work it out, that's great because
So the reason we decided that I would stay home was to just manage all of this, right? And so now I literally every day when I wake up, I just treat this like it's my career, that it's my job, whether it's managing all the therapies and the medical and the insurance component for Brynleigh, but also to me, what fuels me and makes me feel like I'm helping and I'm giving back is to do this, to do the volunteering, to be able to fundraise, to do this advocacy, because my first job out of school was at a nonprofit organization, and I quickly realized they didn't pay that much and that it was a far commute into DC and all these things. And I thought, well, geez, I cannot do this forever. But I remember thinking, I do love this. And it ignites something in me that kind of fuels my fire for wanting to do this kind of career. And I remember kind of putting it on the back shelf and thinking, at some point down the line, I want to work for a charity or I want to work for a nonprofit. I don't know where it's going to be or what it's going to be, but I'll figure it out. Yeah. And then sure enough, TSC found me. And now this is just, it's fulfilling to me, and it just gives me, given me a drive and a passion.
Thank you.
You too.
Well, I just feel like I should acknowledge the effort that you've put in and the results that you've gotten. It's great.
Well, that's awesome.
And you were just Volunteer of the Year.
Oh my gosh, yes. I was
Congratulations.
So surprised. Thank you. It was so cool.
Yeah.
It's just such an honor and a privilege to do what I do for our community. And
so, I just
think it's so cool that we have such a neat organization that's been able to accomplish so many major big things for a little group. And I just feel like this has given me an opportunity to do all these things. And I have to thank my husband all the time, because literally, I mean, sure, should I be going back to work full time? Probably now. Well, we just had another baby, so I can't go back yet. Right. But at some point down the line, I know that's not, I mean, I can't do that forever. But while I can, I think what kind of drives me to continue is that the times that I do have, I try to do these things because I feel like it's my way to give back. So
I think, and I think creative employment is going to be more and more of a viable option. It's got to be, as far as hours, instead of all these commuting when we can do it at home. I mean, it's ridiculous.
Yes. And that's why I think, Jill, honestly, the podcast is unbelievably amazing. I think what you're doing is phenomenal. There was certainly a need for it there. And like I said in the story that I shared with you earlier, I think so many of these topics transcend to other rare diseases, complex medical issues, and I think if somebody else hears this somewhere else that's alone, I think they're going to hear, I'm not alone.
Regularly enough, people pop up like my wife, this or that. Yeah. So it's beautiful.
Yeah. And I think you're ministering and giving back to in a different way. And I think it's obviously where the direction of technology is going. And I think that these podcasts, you can be in your car or at home or even in a waiting room at a doctor's office, right? I mean, listening to this and getting something out of it that you need to hear in that moment. And I think that's what's really spectacular about what you're doing.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure. I wouldn't say it's a pleasure all the time, because to listen to people's pain, and it's tough, but I feel as if it's a calling, I guess. And I think that, I don't know. I don't want to sound all woo-woo, but like you said, it's just faith. It's just putting one foot in front of the other.
Exactly.
I have no idea how it's going to end. I just got to go forward. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and I think too, it gives so much hope to the newly diagnosed families. I mean, at this last event that we just had, we had from 6 weeks old to 65 years old. And when I told the story in DC on the Hill, at our second Maryland Day of Advocacy and Awareness, that was just so, I don't know why it just struck me. And it just struck a chord with me that look at the span of how TSC affects all these different people that are here, and yet we're moving forward, and there is hope, and there are all these things coming down the pike. And it gives hope to the 65-year-old and the adults living with TSC, and to the newly diagnosed that are just been born and found out. And I just think that that's really cool in itself, that we have answers and we have treatments and we have options for wherever you are in your journey. That is something that I think is pretty cool for our community to see.
It's pretty cool. Yeah, because the range of, how people are affected is so wide. To have this is pretty incredible. So yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, I think we should wrap it up. Take care. Thanks for talking, and love to the fam.
Oh, same to you. Take care, hon.
Yeah.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
With the Capital One Saver Card, you earn 4% cash back on dining and entertainment. That's 4% cash back on We Scream for ice cream.
Oh, I want strawberry.
And 4% while you're screaming at the amusement park. The Capital One Saver Card. Earn 4% on dining and 4% on entertainment. Now when you and the family go out, you cash in. Capital One, what's in your wallet?
Terms apply. Capital One Bank, USA, N.A.
There's a difference between do it yourself and do it for a living. At the Home Depot, we get that. And we're here to help pros get the job done with the products and brands you trust. Technology to keep your job on track. Job site delivery to save you time. And bulk pricing on over 4,000 items every day to save you money. When you've got a job, we're on the job. The Home Depot. More saving, more doing.